William Atuguba, the celebrated former Supreme Court Justice of Ghana, known for his judicial acumen and dedication to justice. We delve into the critical aspects of Ghana's democratic evolution, discussing the foundational principles, challenges of accountability, and the role of governance reforms in addressing systemic issues. With his extensive experience, Justice Atuguba provides an invaluable perspective on ensuring Ghana's democracy serves all citizens effectively. Justice Atuguba, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, Ghana has had 32 years of consistent democracy, and there are questions as to whether this democracy has served us well. So, what's your opinion about this position? Is Ghana's democracy holding up, and is it serving us well?
Well, it's yes and no. It's like the operations of a business enterprise. Sometimes there are losses, sometimes there are gains. And on the whole, then you strike a balance. What I have in mind is that, Ghana is steered by an executive presidency and supervised in a measure by the parliament and the courts. In the incidence of the proper functioning of the democracy will have to be viewed against the performances of the various governments, presidents we have had since the 1992 Constitution came into force on the 7th of January 1993. So you look at Rawlings' regime, I think the democratic process fared surprisingly very well under his civilian presidency. In terms of freedom, the fundamental human rights, the independence of the judiciary, the Auditor General, and so on, Shiraj, and you come to Kufuor's administration, was by and large, and they say that the specter of corruption started rearing its head towards the end of President Rawlings' government. Recall some of his ministers were prosecuted and jailed for financial crimes. Pepra, Adam, Ibrahim.
Ibrahim Adams, yeah. Victor Salome, Ibrahim Adams.
Salome, yeah, coming to the Abadapi, and so on. Sipa Yankee, he was not a minister, but was the head of his sector, the chief director. So, but before that, I think there was much accountability.
Okay.
I don't know what happened that this propensity to financial non-accountability reared its head towards the end, the latter part of Rawlings' administration. It's difficult to account for that, but it happened. And then Kufuor came in promising very full, to use his own terminology, zero tolerance for corruption.
Yes.
But not long after his assumption of office, we know what happened. It was the incomprehensible acquisition of a high-class hotel, running to $8 million or so by his son,
Yes.
obviously under his cover. The son, who had only 8,000 cedis in his account, was able to acquire that. It became Hotel de Wawa.
Yes.
It was nicknamed Hotel de Wawa. And so from there, one could see that the accountability was losing grounds. Then it festered. We know what happened. He's the chairman of his party. Said, well, I mean, he was carrying bags of money to the presidency and all kinds of things. So corruption was deepening under Kufuor's administration. As far as the fundamental human rights were concerned, in a large measure, observed. But it was under his administration that if you criticized or insulted the president, you are not spared. People came after you to, deal with you manners that are not democratic. So one could see that the governance system was getting diluted. The independence of the judiciary started melting down from my assessment under Kufuor's administration. Why do I say this? It was under his tenure that very junior justices, three of them who hadn't done much time on the High Court, even lesser time on the Court of Appeal, were hoisted onto the Supreme Court. I can tell you for sure that at that time, I was the representative of the Supreme Court justices on the Judicial Council. And I took exception to that very seriously. I asked the Chief Justice what signal she was sending to the senior justices of the Court of Appeal, in particular, who were bypassed by these juniors coming to the Supreme Court. How would they continue giving of their best? But I was the only one who raised that concern. Nobody supported me in it. I was only one person who was my classmate in the law faculty, the University of Ghana. He became the editor of the Ghana Law Reports.
Okay.
He alone said something. And what did he say? He only said that the number of nominees she had brought for consideration was too big. There were 7.
Okay.
So she said she'll go and review the number downwards. She went and dropped 2 rather senior justices. Justices Mafo Sound and Gbedegwe. They were senior on the bench to these There's Doche, Niyabua, Bafuboni. Surprising to me. Why should that happen? I mean, but well, it went through.
Okay.
So you can see,
Mm.
I mean, if there's no good reason for doing this type of thing, what's the inference
Mhm.
in terms of constitutionalism and democratic dispensation?
Okay.
So that was the situation there. I also remember that when he was swearing in Chief Justice Aqua in succession to Justice Redu, I was present. And he said that, well, even though he was supposed to be independent, the judiciary is independent, but he had to take politics into account. He repeated that. I was
Okay.
there. Um, and so, when a person is told this in his face on the assumption of office by the person who has appointed him,
Yeah.
that's not a positive signal for judicial independence.
Okay.
And unsurprisingly, after some time, one bright Akwete, I admire him for that. Very fearless private legal practitioner. Was a politician at the same time, a CPP activist, gunning for presidency later down the day. He brought a petition for the removal of Chief Justice Aqua, alleging many serious things, among them that he was directing some judges of the High Court as to how to dispose of particular cases. And when two of them resisted, he transferred them in a very radical manner, one to Wa,
Mhm.
and the other to some other outlandish place, forgot. So Brother Kwete documented this and other malpractices in a petition. And the petition was shut down through an action in the Supreme Court. Did not, it wasn't a proper petition worth considering by the president. And that was it. I was certainly not on that panel.
Mhm.
um, I myself, before that, for about 6 months, been virtually suspended as a Supreme Court judge, simply because I maintained my dissent on some aspect of the Chachuchi Chikata case. I think you're aware of that case.
Yes.
Uh,
The,
came on review,
the fast track
and
high court case.
yes, but the fast track, incidentally, I was initially in the minority that was dismissing Chachu's action, his challenge to the constitutionality of the fast track court.
Okay.
And it was, and there again, at the time the decision came, it was a 9-member panel. 4 of us were a minority. Myself, Aqua, Redu, was the fourth, I think so far, Kufu, yes. Kufu was then out of the country, and he fumed against the decision and that he would do all in his power to reverse it. Imagine that. He came, I think, other judges, Afre, Kwame Afre, and Lamptey, were promoted from the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court. They were on the review panel, and then they supported our side. So now it became 6-5 majority, reversing the initial
decision.
judgment.
So, but
I
do you
must
think
say
that?
that,
Okay.
yes. Oh,
Yeah.
go
So
on.
yeah, but do you think that perhaps we should face the realities of the fact that we are human and the potential of judges to align with one political party or the other is something that is very real? And for that matter, for instance, in the case of the United States,
Yes.
judges are nominated based on
Yes.
ideological grounds, and they tend to
Yes.
lean towards one party or the other. And sometimes, with certain
Mm,
cases, you tend to know
mm,
which way which judge is likely to vote.
mm, mm.
Should we take a
Well,
similar approach to the judiciary in Ghana?
well, for me, I unhesitatingly say, and I've said in conversation with some friends, I don't go out, a few people come and we discussions. I have often said that the United States judicial system is a bad example to the world, a very bad example, because they openly allow for the packing of their Supreme Court. They do it openly. Now, how do you have an independent judiciary in that manner? If you look at it, um, I confronted some judges who were on visit to Ghana and some lawyers from the US about the Al Gore uh, electoral case.
Versus Bush.
I asked them, I said, you in the US, you say you are the beacons of democracy in the whole world. And how did Al Gore's case go that way? They couldn't give me an answer, but they went back and sent a book uh, entitled The Scorpions of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
I think giving the background of the appointment of the justices from Frankfurter and all these people up to uh, recent times. I think probably to let me see the
Clinton.
undertones
Yeah, okay.
uh, of the appointments. Well, I couldn't really uh, get it as they intended.
No, but because
I felt that,
I was reading the speech that you gave in 2013, and
yes,
you gave a long list of interferences with the judiciary since from Nkrumah's period all the way to even Lehman, um,
yeah,
Buzia, every regime. You cited cases that had the interference of the executive in the judiciary, which clearly
yes.
indicates that it's inevitable.
Uh, I would say it's inevitable simply because it happens. It ought not to happen. It could have been if the country and all the stakeholders were minded to do that, to prevent such interference, to succeed.
Okay.
If not 100%, to a very large measure. Let's move to the United Kingdom. Do we have such grievances about the English judicial system? I'm not aware
No.
of any fear of executive interference with the English judiciary. Yeah, I'm not aware of any instance, except the famous or infamous case of Liversidge versus Anderson,
Mhm.
which was a wartime detention case. And the court literally upheld the power of detention. It could not be questioned. We remember the famous dissent of Lord Atkin.
Mhm.
I view with apprehension the attitude of some judges when face to face with a question of construction of a statute show themselves more executive-minded than the executive. The question is whether if A has grounds to believe can mean if A thinks that he has grounds to believe. Well, so that is it. You can see the temperament of the English judiciary. With hindsight, we feel that in times of national security issues, I don't think that Lord Atkins' position ought to be upheld in the raw.
Okay.
Security, national security, the nation must exist and survive before all other things can be considered and applied to it. But we all know that shortly after that wartime era, Lieutenant Sergeant Anderson was departed from very liberally. And so that's an instance where it's possible to have a judiciary that cannot be manipulated executively.
Okay.
Although they're also humans, like anybody. But English justice is really sound.
Okay.
That's because their system is not, well, I think they have a long tradition of judicial independence. Because until now it was the Lord Chancellor was appointing the Superior Court judges and so forth. But they are principled. They would not use executive, malleability. It's well known that until the establishment of the English Supreme Court, the judges of the superior courts were drawn from the QC class of England. That was it. And the QC class, as we know, consists of the crack lawyers of the English legal system. And so it's a question of merit, nothing else.
Okay.
So it's a doable thing.
Okay.
To have a judiciary that is truly independent. If people, the particular country, so wishes, and it's up to it.
Okay.
So I know that is not possible to have 100% independence. Although I still, in the round, I do not see why, but I grant some dispensation in favor of your point of human fallibility. But the margin of it should be so thin that it cannot have a cumulative effect. Because, it's a panel of judges. And if you have only one or two bad nuts, they cannot hold sway over the important decisions.
Okay. So, for instance, in ancient Athens, they solved that problem by selecting their magistrates by lot. So, in the case of Ghana, is there something that you think could be done to at least, if like move closer towards that aspiration of judicial independence? I think it's an aspirational goal. We cannot achieve it in its ultimate form, but at least we can aspire. And what measures could be put in place to drive us in that direction? based on what you have observed over the years?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we have to intend it as a nation, particularly in terms of the drivers of the constitutional order and its operations. There must be that political will on the part of whoever is president, part of the executive, and the bar association and the general legal council. We look at the composition, the present composition of our judicial council. There's no intendment to really uphold the independence of the judiciary. Let's go through it just briefly.
Okay.
Uh, well, I can read out the provisions towards the end. Okay, if you. Mm. Sorry for the hold on, but
Oh,
I
that's
could
fine. Yeah.
tell you its composition without. Okay, Judicial Council. Here we are.
Mm-hmm.
There shall be a judicial council which shall comprise the following persons. A, the Chief Justice, who shall be chairman. The Chief Justice is somebody appointed by the President to start with.
Okay.
Okay. The Attorney General is appointed by the, the President.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the Minister of State, the beck and call of the President. Something. Then I have a Justice of the Supreme Court nominated by the Justices of the Supreme Court. This is a very dicey provision.
Mm-hmm.
Why should it be an issue for election? When the Constitution itself says that if in certain circumstances where the Chief Justice is unable to act, the most senior justice performs the roles of the Chief Justice, the functions of the Chief Justice. So why logically can't the most senior be the representative of the Supreme Court justices?
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of fluid provision gives room for the Chief Justices to maneuver and pick the one they want by influencing the vote. I was there, I'm telling you.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. In
Yeah.
fact, I was asked by a new Chief Justice, let me spare his name, but if he insists, I can mention his name, when he first came to office,
Mm-hmm.
that he was our representative on the Judicial Council. Now that he was Chief Justice, he wanted me there. But I'd called to congratulate him on his appointment. He said, oh, yes, I was the second person to congratulate him, and that he'll be looking up to me as one of his right-hand men. What nonsense is this? What do you mean by right-hand man? Are we dealing with chieftaincy here? I mean, it didn't make sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I was outraged.
Okay.
But I certainly didn't go to talk to lobby anybody to be made the representative. I was really furious.
Mm.
He couldn't read my mind. And so a certain judge who had newly come to the Supreme Court from Court of Appeal won the election.
Okay.
And then after some time, he found his way going to the Gambia to be Chief Justice there. So this Chief Justice came again. He had told me the first time to lobby ahead of time, and I didn't. So this time the vacancy had arisen again. I should do that. I didn't do it. In fact, I felt very outraged because I could imagine such ideas obtaining in the Supreme Court at that level.
No,
What are we about?
no.
I mean, how can you have a sound judicial system with this kind of mindset?
Mindset.
But that Chief Justice, I must say in his praise and honor that he was very legally competent. He could deliver very sound, well-reasoned judgments.
Mm-hmm.
But this is how he was otherwise performing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's go on.
Yeah. All right. So from our conversation so far, from, for instance, the excesses of the executive and to the judiciary, it sounds like we don't have an internally built systems of accountability in our democracy. I mean, and if you look at the Americans, they had a foundational principle that in every step of the way, in formulating the governance arrangements, they cycle back to that foundational principle. And the essence of it was to ensure accountability. In our case, would you say something like that is missing? Is there a foundational principle that would always have to remind us that we are veering away from it?
Well, definitely, because we fought for independence from British rule. Nkrumah was overthrown, saying that it was dictatorial, there was no liberty, there was interference with the judiciary, and so on. Buzia was overthrown, and all these things. So, if you look at our succeeding constitutions, they refer to all these things as our foundational weaknesses, the reversal of which will constitute our foundational principle for going forward.
Okay.
I'm not too excited about the American foundational principle as far as it relates to the judiciary. It doesn't show. Maybe from the beginning,
Yes.
somebody like oh, Chief Justice was it Warren? No, the one who asserted the power of judicial review of the Supreme Court
Okay.
to declare acts of Congress unconstitutional if they conflicted with the Constitution.
Okay.
You know, there were traces of that, but going forward, you can see they expressly appoint their judges on political, philosophical leanings. It's very express, very obvious. They've been wrestling over it. When the president's term is coming to an end and he's trying to appoint just the opposition will say, oh, no, 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 no. Ought to leave it to us. I mean, the United States is to me, is very scandalous. I would say that.
Yeah, because I think
So,
the underlying philosophy is the fact that interest counters interest,
okay, yeah.
and so the system of checks and balances that are building, they are building such that the self-interestedness of one party would counter the self-interestedness of another party, and then it brings the system to balance.
That will obtain if the composition, particularly of the Supreme Court, is balanced in the way you have indicated. But is there a balance? They often want, if it's Republicans, the vast majority, they want to ensure they are pro-Republican justices. That's what I see about that system. And so it has been tilted politically over the years. In saying this, let me throw a word of praise for Chief Justice Roberts. In recent times, well, have to scrutinize things a bit before. But he dissented on this Al Gore case, if I remember rightly. And I value him for that. I think he was a Republican. He was
So,
appointed by the Republicans.
yes.
And this was against Bush. Yeah?
Yes.
That, yes, yeah, I think George Bush or something. But he dissented in favor of Al Gore. That
Okay.
is something to look out for. These are the kind of people they should be looking for, not going by party colors, ideological leanings, as they openly do. As for the US, they openly do it. So when Biden came, he was bowing to counterbalance,
Got
didn't have his way. But that shows clearly what is happening.
Mhm.
So the balance you are talking of, yes, is the panacea to it, but then it is not manifested, is not uh, catered for in the process of appointments to the Supreme Court.
Okay.
They actually uh, uh, do it on tilted political partisan basis, so open. So then there's no balance.
Okay.
There's no balance at all.
So, but let's, delve into the question of, you know, separation of powers in our system as well. Again, the idea of accountability is supposed to be checked by separation of powers.
Mm.
Is it an inherent weakness in our constitutional regime, or could that be the reason why we are facing issues of accountability in our governance arrangements?
Well, oh yes. If you look at our constitutional framework, we do not intend a wholesome and strong separation of powers. You have them enumerated: executive, judiciary, legislature. But then look at the appointment process.
Mhm.
The president is appointing virtually anybody who matters. That's a recall of independence. I particularly remember that when Chief Justice Aqua passed, and they were looking for a Chief Justice. I've been trying to get that publication. I said it was in the Daily Graphic. It was stated brazenly on the front page of the Daily Graphic. I went to research to get that, or maybe I misrecollected the paper, where it was stated that the post of Chief Justice is political and that seniority would not count. And I knew that I was the one they were aiming at. I was the most senior in real terms, because the most senior was very sick that
Mm,
time. Nonetheless, they even brought him to act over and to block my way. I couldn't be bothered.
okay.
I just wanted the right things to be done. If I have the chance, I'll see to the right thing to be done. If you block me, well, you can't blame me. But to the extent that I still can do it in my judgments, I'll do so. That's what I'll continue doing. You see. So you look at, I was reading out the composition of the Judicial Council.
Mhm.
You start with the Chief Justice, an appointee of the President, the Attorney General, and a representative of the Supreme Court, and a representative of the other ranks of the courts. These are all below the Chief Justice. They look up to for their welfare, uh, you know, largesse,
Mhm.
benefits, and promotion. Are they going to stand up to a Chief Justice? And you uh, have four nominees of the president sitting on the Judicial Council.
Yes, sir.
Where is the intendment that is the judiciary should be independent. And these are the judicial council, all appointments
Go
to
through.
the superior court, which are the most important, emanate from the judicial council. There's no way somebody can be appointed to the superior court without a recommendation by the judicial council. And then you have somebody, they say the judge advocate of the armed forces. Well, what's the clout of this kind of person? And then the legal advisor to the police service council or something. What's his clout?
Yeah.
Then the editor of the Ghana Law Reports is appointed by the, the system. What is his clout? You know. So where is the intendment in support of the separation of powers as far as the judiciary is concerned? When it's like a kite. You throw a kite up there, but it's controlled by the string. That's how it is. You look at the executive. Okay, Parliament.
Yes.
Parliament intended to be independent, even contextually, under our constitution, where the constitution itself requires the majority of ministers to be appointed from Parliament. There's a complete fusion of the executive and the
legislature.
the
Yes.
legislature. There's no intendment there, even contextually, to institutionalize the separation of powers.
Yeah.
It's quite clear. You come to, as I said, the other important bodies, Auditor General, Shraj, Electoral Commission. All these are appointed by the president, either in consultation with or on the advice of somebody. I mean,
yeah. So I read Manasseh Azore's book, and he said in an interview with Muntaka, Muntaka said a majority of the MPs come to Parliament with the intention of eventually becoming ministers, and that they don't have real intention of doing legislative work.
That's very true. It's a springboard to ministerial appointment, because the vast majority constitutionally must come from Parliament. And so if you are somebody of wealth in a sort, by entering Parliament, you are almost an automatic minister.
Okay.
And I'm scandalized because I think it was the 79 Constitution which at least provided that if you are appointed a minister from Parliament, you must resign from Parliament and then a by-election. But this time at all.
No. Yeah.
So you are holding the position of member of Parliament and an executive member of the government, and you form the majority of Parliament. Where is the separation of powers? Where?
Well, I mean, and most of the people that support that position actually cite the shortcomings of the Liman administration as a reason why they should merge the two, that his budget didn't pass, and that kept, government business on hold.
Well, let's look at that closely. Must all budgets pass? If all budgets must pass, it's just a mechanical exercise. What is then the raison d'etre of the parliamentary overview of the budget? So a budget failure can be a healthy event, speaking. And the Le Mans government, well, they had only 71 members, and the opposition put together has 69 members of the various breakdowns
the coalition,
of parliamentary. Yes. And so it happened that way. Except it can be demonstrated that there was bad faith in it. You don't see why somebody should panic because of that and make it. That means you want Parliament to be a rubber stamp.
Mm-hmm.
That is what it amounts to. Because if it is to do critical, independent assessment, a budget can fail.
Yeah.
You know, if they want to cooperate, they can point out certain weaknesses referred back to the. But if the president is adamant, they should fail it.
Yeah.
They are there for that.
Yeah. And I think that's the very purpose of the separation of powers, right? And checks and balances, oversight.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But as it is, I'm very sorry. The Ghanaian situation, separation of powers, has become farcical. I use that word, farcical. Very farcical.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, look, some years ago, when I was in the service, and I got a radio, I was listening once in a while. Some MPs were frank and bold enough when elections were approaching. They were interviewed on radio, and they said for them, Parliament was a rubber stamp, and that it was inconceivable that they would go contrary to the president's wish. They said that on air. Said that. And I admire them for that, at least for being that frank. That is it.
Yeah.
And our party system is such that loyalty in Ghana is more to the president and his party over and above the national interest. That's our situation.
Yeah.
Except a few accidents.
Yeah.
Just let us recall. Kufado's second term after the 2020 general elections, when it was a hung parliament, and they were to elect the speaker. And when the count of the vote was showing that the MPP would not have the speaker, an MP actually took hold of the ballot box and was running
out. Yeah.
Yes, live.
On TV.
And later he even said that he couldn't imagine his party losing out on that. So he had to do that. Look at that. Look at the mindset.
Yeah.
You see, this type of thing. Are we serious? You know? And the question is, as you said, people go there, they want to position themselves for the perks of ministerial power and other favors. Look, even up to date, to date, there's speculation that the MPs demand money to pass bills.
Okay.
I actually sat on a platform near an MP, I've forgotten his name, a PhD holder, and one of our resource persons, a lady, was delivering a speech, and she touched on the importance of money and so on. And this man sitting by me said, yes, money is important. So they bring the money and we pass the bills.
Wow.
PhD holder.
Wow.
An MP. He was sitting by me. Just look at that.
So is this a general breakdown of civic virtue? Is there no civic culture in our system whereby, there's just that natural incentive to be noble in your dealings?
Well, by and large, I would not even say by and large, largely so. You may have some who will be adverse to this corruption, but how many are they? It's a small number. cannot have effect. And probably people feel that, the only chance of making money as an MP, realistically, is when bills come. Otherwise, at the beck and call of the executive. Want something, you have to go and lobby a minister. He doesn't like your face, particularly when you are from the opposition. You dare not.
Yeah.
These things have taken hold of our system.
Okay. So
One wants,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
So
mean,
talking about accountability, there's oral that has been
yes,
put out by the NDC as a way of addressing the corrupt practices of public officials. And I think during the vetting of the Attorney General nominee, he also mentioned the potential reintroduction of the public tribunals, analogous to what happened in, I think, was it the AFRC or PNDC days?
PNDC
Uh,
era.
yeah, PNDC. So do you think these are mechanisms that can improve the accountability of public officials, or?
To start with, the perception about the public tribunals, there was an outcry against them, particularly by the legal profession. They boycotted them for a long time. Um, even though they tried to placate them by providing for an appeal to the National Appeals Tribunal, and they still were not satisfied. And so they dovetailed them into the Constitution. It's like that, because their decisions were appealable to the Court of Appeal and so forth. Nonetheless, their composition was said that you have a presiding judge is a professional, plus two non-professionals or three. And so lawyers certainly will not be happy with that system, because a lawyer will make his tackle, fix his tackle based on the legal rules. He feels that with that, when he fixes his tackle well, in terms of the legal rules and principles, he is going to be victorious. Not necessarily so in the public tribunal, where they say technicalities, so-called technicalities. But I think that by and large, the tribunals, particularly after the first heady days of the revolutionary idea, they were functioning quite well.
Okay.
And I think that's why when the three high court judges and the retired army
Of
major were adopted
major.
and amended, it was the public that cried against their trial before the ordinary courts. It was the public.
Okay.
So they had to be tried by the public tribunal. And they didn't acquit them.
Yeah.
Sentenced them to death. They faced firing squad.
Mm-hmm. I think one escaped.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's his name?
America. Or that?
America. Yeah.
Yeah.
He escaped. Yeah.
Yeah.
But justice was done. So, but by and large, I don't think that alone was enough to dispel the skepticism about the the perceived nebulous nature of public tribunal systems. So the confidence in them was not high.
Okay.
And I think it persisted after the constitution came into force. That's why they were fizzled out through the attitudes that the chief justices adopted towards them, actually strangled them out of the system by promoting. There were many of them. Each region had a tribunal.
Okay.
But Justice Redu, he started that. He promoted all to the regular High Court bench,
Okay.
except 2 regional tribunal chairmen. And I don't think they were getting cases. And I think when they retired, no other appointments
were made. Yeah.
That is it. So as for politicians, that's why I don't go near them, because they always want to have their way. And that is very troubling.
Yes.
There is absolutely no need to go back to the public tribunal system once there's that skepticism.
Okay.
I mean, if people want, if we want a sound system and we intend to do it, we can do it. You look at the High Court, there are good ones there. And there's the judicial division for financial crimes or this kind of thing. Post them, see to it that they are moved there. They are constituted by such judges.
Okay.
And that is it. They will do a good job. Go and resurrect something that's controversial. For what?
Okay.
Okay.
So, well, I promise to hold you. Yeah.
And even they could have many of such judges in supply the system if there is courage and intent to clean the judiciary.
Okay.
I mean, before the recent election, there was a outcry against the judiciary, no confidence. Afrobarometer, Mo Ibrahim, this thing assessment, and even internal, people had no confidence. Social media, you just find views. Particularly the Supreme Court, they call them unanimous FC.
Yes.
Oh yes, blatantly. And it was so. The cry against the judiciary was so high.
Yeah.
Now there's a new government. What do you do if you intend to? If your cry against it at that time was principled, this is the time you should flush out the bad elements.
Okay.
You only take time, that you don't do it politically. But those who can be shown by empirical evidence to have been political poodles, you get them out.
Okay.
And then you can amend the constitution, or even without it, just make sure that those coming to replace them are competent and independent.
Okay.
That should be the basis.
So should the Supreme Court have a cap?
Is it?
Do you think the Supreme Court should have a cap?
Yes, why not? Because the propensity of African political magnates is to juggle the system to fit their idiosyncrasies each time they find themselves in the saddle of power. And so it's important to prevent that.
Okay.
But people just talk on social media, after all, the US has only 9 justices. Ghana, they have too many, 14, and they are trying to increase the number. Without any proper, education or enlightenment about the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court.
Okay.
It's too large. There's nowhere near your Supreme Court there.
Yeah.
You know,
They don't take up all cases.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It has original jurisdiction. It has supervisory jurisdiction. It has this appellate jurisdiction. It has review. All kinds of things. There are about 5 or 6. It's a whole lot.
Yeah.
And the volume of litigation has surged more and more over the years. I think the last time, shortly before the elections, the Chief Justice was pushing for the appointment of more justices. And I was interviewed on that matter. And I said, yes, she was right. If only the process of appointment is genuine.
Yes.
Yes. That if it's genuine, there is the need. And I was advocating about a minimum of 25 Supreme Court judges so that they have at least 4 panels, because the Supreme Court sits on a panel, a minimum of 5 for, substantive cases.
Okay.
It's interlocutory matters, you can have 1 judge or then going to 3. Otherwise, the minimum is 5. And she brought out a caseload of about almost 800 pending cases before the Supreme Court. And then justice delayed is justice denied. If you have almost 800 cases and the judges are 12 for, let's say, even 15, look at it, it means that each judge will be called upon to handle not less than 5 or more cases at a time. To affect the quality of justice delivery. It's too heavy.
Yes.
And a record of appeal comes. A case, let's say it even commences from the High Court, a lot of evidence submission through the Court of Appeal and then Supreme Court. You have appeals from Houses of Chiefs, the National House, with leave of the Supreme Court of the National House. Supervisory jurisdiction is frequently invoked.
Okay.
Those normally are questions of law, but they are very loaded and contentious matters, requiring a lot of reflection and deep research, So
okay.
I said, if it goes, if they have even up to 25, that's fine. But that will give a panel, 5 panels available at a given time. But
or should the jurisdiction be redefined to streamline the cases so that the Supreme Court doesn't have to take all cases?
Yes, I've been thinking of that. And it ought not to be so if the judiciary were soundly composed.
Okay.
Let's go back a bit. In the 60s, coming to the 70s and early 80s, I think the Court of Appeal, which was then the highest court, had only 5 justices. And there was no outcry about they being overburdened by anything. What happened was that the High Court was constituted by very sound judges.
Okay.
Aban, Francois, Redu, all sorts. They were very, 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 they came from the bar after several years of practice. And most of them tarried at the High Court for not less than 10 years before moving up to the Court of Appeal. So they were very much, experienced and, learned. And so appeals from their judgments were not
thrown out. Okay.
often, because your chances of success were no good.
Okay.
You see, and that lessened the work of the Court of Appeal, and it didn't require, so that the 5 there were okay to handle things. Uh-huh. But over the years, you know,
Quality.
corruption crept in the bar, was diluted somewhere, intelligence, sharp practices, the bench, corruption crept in, particularly from, let's say, 2000 going, particularly. As for the Supreme Court, it also got affected further down than
Okay.
there was an element in it, but but it wasn't of any serious dimension. But over the years, it wasn't.
Okay.
So, but the Supreme Court didn't even need to be the final appellate court. The Court of Appeal, if it is properly constituted, should be able to be the main appellate court, the last appellate court, because look at our judicial system, from magistracy to circuit to high before Court of Appeal. People are drawn from that trajectory, and sometimes from the bar. In the good old days, the bar, you had to be solid. So that if you were proposed to the bench, everybody was expecting that and will hail you. So people coming up were competent in the law and the principles. And so with that, I mean, when a high court judge, a sound high court judge gives judgment, as I said, in the 70s, the propensity to appeal was very low because the judgments were sound. They were very well-informed judges, very learned,
Yeah.
you know, and corruption was not yet any factor,
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
But over the years, the guard was let down, and that's why people will be appealing from High Court to Court of Appeal to Supreme Court. I mean, are possible.
Yeah.
So, if they reconstitute the Court of Appeal now, I think they're about almost 50 something judges there. But that's because they have the provincial input. I call it provincial, the regions.
Okay.
Some judges go and sit there from time to time. But even there, the incidence is not so high that we need this kind of number. I remember when I was on the bench, and I realized that the Court of Appeal had up to was 21 or 25 judges. I used to make fun of them that you are a parliament, so you should elect your speaker. You should have a speaker. That's ballooned even beyond that.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court need not be overburdened if the judiciary is well structured in terms of quality, merit, experience, competence. I mean, you won't have so many cases going up. And the right of appeal ought to be really restored as it is as of right in almost all the situations.
Yeah.
And so lawyers too, the bite of defeat is what will push them to appeal even where they don't believe the appeal
will succeed. Mm.
So,
Yeah. So yeah.
it's a question.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, you go ahead.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No, no,
So
no. Come, come.
okay. All right. So I was going to
Yeah.
say, well, I promised to keep you for an hour, and then we are
Yeah.
beyond an hour. But I wanted
Oh,
us to,
really?
yeah, I wanted us to touch on the Constitution review, and there's
Yeah, I don't mind.
conversation.
I don't mind. I'm not aware that we've done an hour. Let's go on.
Okay, okay. I mean, if
Yeah.
you don't mind, then yes, we can keep going.
Yeah.
Yes.
If it's convenient to you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. I was
Okay.
mindful of your time. Yes.
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with the Constitution review, are there certain things that you think should be very instrumental to that process? Are they very critical points of review that you think are very essential to strengthen perhaps our democracy or judiciary or even separation of powers?
Well, I think our discussion so far has answered that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've said that the separation of powers is cosmetic,
Mm.
both in terms of constitutional text and the practice on the ground. Uh, and that the constitutional text itself does not really intend to effect any realistic separation of powers. And that should be addressed. And the president has octopus powers of appointment of the
Mhm.
critical institutional heads. This, I mean, if you overpower somebody like that, and in the African context,
Mhm.
the African context, uh, people tend to be very dictatorial and power conscious. I mean, just look at it in Africa. Where can we boast of true, democracy?
Mhm.
Maybe Mauritius, uh, uh, Namibia, to some extent, Botswana, a few. I think there are about 5. And even over the years, I think there's some dilution somewhere
Yeah.
among some of them. But let's look at the typical ones. Uganda,
Mhm.
hmm? uh, Togo,
Cameroon.
eh?
Yeah.
Nigeria.
Mhm.
Nigeria used to have a very sound judiciary. The days of Chief Justice, Elias, and so forth. Very, very sound judges, very powerful Supreme Court. Over the years, I think it got to a stage where I think it was Buhari who appointed somebody. They said his competence was in Islamic law. That's Chief Justice. Uh,
Yeah.
to let him come to power, he pushed out the incumbent Chief Justice through some very,
Dubious.
faulty
Mhm.
process. I got him out. Uh, where in Africa? Cameroon?
Yeah.
Where? Even now, in some of the military uh, regimes, I think things are even going better.
Yeah. Burkina
They're
Faso.
going better.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
Mali,
Mali. Yeah.
Niger,
Yeah. Um,
uh,
uh,
yes,
Guinea. Guinea. Yeah.
Guinea.
Yes.
Yes, things
Yeah.
are getting better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you just look at it, the contrast,
Yeah.
what accounts for that, you know.
Yeah.
So, there must be a true separation of powers,
Okay.
you know. Checks and balances do not mean fusing them,
Mhm.
you know. It's just to spell out their areas of authority more clearly. I, I must confess that I don't understand the extent of the executive power conferred on our president. I mean, how far does it go? They say it relates to the execution and maintenance of the Constitution and the other laws. What does
Mhm.
that mean?
There are no clear boundaries.
No clear boundaries. And so they just try their luck. Oh, yeah, let's remove this one. And some questions come up. And that is because, as far as the 92 Constitution is concerned, the proposals for it were going in for an executive presidency and then a prime minister.
Yeah.
And it was conceived that the president will be confined to very high matters of policy and the ground power be exercised by the prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't go through.
Okay.
You see, it didn't go through. And the proposals were built on that expectation. It didn't go through, but it went through that way.
Mm.
So I mean, see that the traction there is problematic.
So the principles don't fit together.
No, 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 no. And that's I keep on emphasizing. There's no constitutional intent under our system to effectuate the separation of powers. There's no constitutional intent. Looking at the provisions, they state the categories broadly and recall them under the executive, particularly the presidency. Well, there's no separation of powers. Chief Justice appointed by President, Attorney General by President. There's 4 nominees on the Judicial Council. Almost all the other institutions of consequence, he is the appointing authority. Sometimes in consultation with the Council of State. And even if it's on the advice of the Council, look at the Constitution of the Council of State. Is it in a independent body? And worst of all, adopting the American style.
Yes.
Supreme Court justice to be vetted, to be approved by Parliament. What type of Parliament do we have?
Yeah.
If I followed the vetting processes, rubber stamp, the president, when he sends the list, it will go through. No matter that there are serious detractions from some of the images of the candidates, but they'll go through.
Yeah.
This is what happens. So, I mean, I don't see the wisdom in bringing in Parliament, because if you are setting up a legal institution, it's not a question of any number of laymen having their say. Finally, it's a professional thing, so it should be limited to the legal profession.
Okay.
The Judicial Council should be soundly established. It ends there. Are we going to say that this very wild idea of democracy in the US, the people must have a say in everything? Should we now elect medical doctors?
Yeah.
I mean,
in fact, in the US, they didn't even intend it that way. The US system was meant to be more aristocratic than popular rule.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. As I said, bad system. I don't know why our people went in for that. When Britain is a solid judicial system, solid.
Yeah.
I haven't heard any cries against the judiciary in the British system.
But going on that tangent, is it because we fail to customize our own democratic principles? Because, I mean, if you look at most African traditional rule, there were some elements of democratic practices. If you look at the way the Ashantis chose their chiefs, and even in the northern part, maybe the Upper East, where we were largely acephalous societies, right? There were some egalitarian ways of doing things that are organic to us, such that I think we could have had a customized democracy that is built from the ground up based on our own internal principles.
Well, to a delicate extent, because that sounds attractive. But let's look at what happens on the ground. The way chiefs, look at the number of chieftaincy disputes and conflicts. The process has become doctored. Somebody is not qualified. Look at Yendi. The Gomba chieftaincy crisis that has claimed so many lives and destruction of properties for a very long time.
Okay.
Look at Boko.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those institutions are there, but if they were working soundly, again, the poison of politics has entered there.
Mm-hmm.
You see, but if those are traditional values were preserved, I mean, they can dispel the intrusion of politics. This is a traditional matter. How do you come in? The rules are there. The line of succession is there, you know, but corruption has also crept in there.
Yes.
You know, people with money can have their way. And in any case, after the chief has been enskined or installed, what's the democracy for the people? It becomes virtually a dictator in many ways. The councillors doting around him, looking for perks and things. You know, it's not. But um, we can indict ourselves for blindly copying and pasting Western systems. I don't know why. Are we under any, compulsion to do that? Is it a spell that has been cast over us? We want to evolve a system at once. Either we are going to Britain or United States. We can't think of our own.
Yeah.
You know, for me, for example, what we need is good governance.
Mm-hmm.
The emphasis should be on good governance and not political arrangements or systems.
Okay.
Because the political party system has poisoned the drive and objects of seeking power, of seeking office. You know, the state is not at the center of consideration. The common will
Good.
is not what is at the center. It's like, I don't know, a hunting expedition. Uh, People go together and they hunt when they get game. Then next thing is
Share.
how do they share things out? And that is what is happening,
Okay.
you know. So to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why some of us will probably never get into the Constitutional Review Committee. Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've stated my views to some of the journalists who used to come and interview me, and I think they've sent their signals back where
The powers
they
that be.
feel they should have let them.
They've sent the signals to the powers that be.
Yes, exactly.
Mm.
You know, because at a sense, I told one of the leading pressmen, the journalists, that the 2024 election should be the last one.
Mm-hmm.
And this sequel should determine whether we should maintain the political party system or scrap it and go in for union government, non-partisan system. Why not? Do we need, is it, if we critically look at the political party system, what is the benefit that we derive from it?
Mm-hmm.
Apart from political pollution, corruption, nepotism, cronyism, What is that? And what do they bring to the table anyway? These are politicians. Are they technocrats?
No.
And they come and they take hold of the power and dictate things.
Yeah.
Dictate to the technocrats. You know, when they themselves are shallow in the various fields, but they must.
Yeah.
The technocrats must pander to their whims and caprices.
Mm-hmm.
They can't have good governance. So the emphasis should shift from party political system to good governance.
No. Okay.
We don't need political parties to put in place good governance institutions. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a properly constituted appointing body, you know, to see and make the placements in the various institutions, you know, and you have an oversight body. That's not political. You can have an oversight, a kind of monitoring and coordinating administrative body that will oversee the operations of these institutions, whether they are performing, whether there's corruption, and to take action.
Okay.
You can get to the party poison will not fester there.
Yeah.
What we need is for the state to be properly run and managed for the common benefit. That's more important than wild ideas of, you know, uh, democracy involving the fundamental right to choose your leaders. So, look, this last election,
Mm-hmm.
in one constituency, the MPP parliamentary candidate was the driver of the immediate past president. His driver, he
Okay.
won the MPP
The
primaries
yeah.
for, I don't know this place, although it was supposed to be my concern when I was in the service, they call it La Dade,
La, La
La,
Datepon or something like that. Yeah. La
I
Datepon.
didn't even know that that was my concern. When I was in service, I didn't know it was my concern. I couldn't be bothered about those things. He emerged as the parliamentary candidate for MPP for that constituency.
Wow.
And he cannot speak English. No, can't speak English.
Yeah.
He has never been to school.
Because of the
If at
influence of the
all,
president.
sure, the money,
Money. Yes.
money.
Mm. Wow.
So where are we going with this?
Yeah.
Uh, uh, and that he says democratic is an election. Is it an election?
No.
Cash and carry,
Yes. Pay for
not
play.
an election.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And see, um, people argue with me about civilian rules, but I've come to realize that civilians can be the worst dictators and corrupt people simply because they know the wide world will support civilian
Yeah.
system. That is their trump card.
Okay.
They enter into it not with intent to build any nation or to run a proper government, to benefit themselves.
Okay.
So as
Yeah.
you know, so
Okay.
people argue, oh no, um, you can't do it without the parties. And sometimes I ask, when there's a coup, do you have the parties? Doesn't the state operate?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes for 3, 4 years. And sometimes some military regimes do better,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Okay.
So, but there is some hope because when you look at the last election, the electorate rose up,
Yes.
discounting bribes and so forth. You can brandish your money in front of them in all kinds of quantities, but for the first time, they voted on principle.
Yes.
Mm, More probably because of the bite of the economic deterioration.
Mm-hmm.
inflation surged up. The suffering was too much.
Yeah.
Probably that informed people. Uh, but having started it, I don't think they would like to slide back. And if that is maintained, okay, we can keep the political party system. Try it allows people to participate in the governance system and all that. If not, I don't see why we shouldn't evolve our own.
Yeah.
You know, we can
Okay.
evolve our own.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. I mean, because
with
certainly that's
emphasis on good
good
governance.
governance. Yes. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Because I mean, in as much as you think the American system is not the best, but they developed their own, right? They
Mhm.
deliberately use their brain power to develop what they
Yes,
believed to be something that will work
exactly.
for them. So
And
yes,
it was based on their experiences.
yes,
Yes, their
yes.
civil wars. I
Mhm.
mean, how they fought to
The
liberate
revolution against the
themselves from
British. Yes,
Britain.
yes,
Yes, and then to preserve the federal the federation.
yes, yes.
It wasn't easy.
Mhm.
So they devised this things to suit those
Yes,
experiences.
yes,
We devise ours to discount our experiences.
yes,
Let's go in for things that do not reflect
yes. Okay.
needs on the ground.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
So look, this constitution, as
Mm-hmm.
we went through, I mean, I told one journalist that look, we should review the constitution in such a way that the president is armed of most of his powers,
Okay.
his appointing powers, and they should be disarmed of them. Eh, you can limit the executive to the running of the economy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to let them be in charge of every facet of you know state organization. They should run the economy, and even there, if the parliament is sound, you just look at uh, our parliament. What's the quality in it? Once you are 18 years and of sound mind, you are good to go.
Yeah.
I mean, discounting quality,
Yeah.
and not just realistic.
Okay.
And so, if
Yeah.
somebody has no educational social method, he goes in there. What do you expect?
Yeah.
You know, all these have to be reviewed realistically.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
even look at the parliamentary race.
Yes.
The last election we had 13 candidates, when everybody knows there are only two.
They in the
You
race.
know, and they just look at the constitutional provisions for running qualifications for running for president. Literally,
Mm-hmm.
you know, uh, I don't even think they scrutinize the process of nomination is a bit stringent. But, confining it to just the literal text of the narrow qualifications is a misdirection
Yeah.
because, you see, those qualifications are geared towards achieving the election of a president based on 50 plus one,
Mm-hmm.
you know, minimum threshold.
Yes.
How many of these people go anywhere near 1%
Mm-hmm.
of the votes? So are they really presidential material? Are they on a true and purposive construction of the provisions together?
Mm-hmm.
I think that these people should be allowed to make mockery of the
Yeah.
electoral system.
Mm-hmm.
And then, okay,
Yeah.
they say it's their right, right.
Mm.
And what do they do? Some just go and align with the major parties, take
Parties.
monies.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, that is it. You know.
Mm. Okay.
So a lot of things actually
Yeah.
have to be reviewed if we want
Okay.
to make progress.
Okay.
Yeah.
But we have to think through them ourselves, definitely, and not to
Yes. Yes.
repeat the age-old
Exactly.
process of copying and pasting. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
In 2021, I launched a book for some young man at Cape Coast.
Mm.
And I recall making two recommendations strongly, which I thought were important. I said, number one, Ghana is a state, but it's not a nation.
Mm.
We're a state, but we're not a nation.
Yes.
You see, because look at how we even emerged as a state. Loose
Boundaries.
native coastal states put together, and then the British withdrew, are independent. Where was the fusion of these component parts?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So the traditional loyalties and proclivities and so forth uh, were deep-seated.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing was done to integrate the people together as one people,
Mm-hmm.
one destiny, one nation.
Yeah.
Achampong tried to do that.
Mm.
But, um, he did well to a large extent. He was appointing regional ministers from anywhere.
Yeah.
Amedume, who was an Ewe, was the regional commissioner for Ashanti region.
Okay.
Eh? In the Upper East, our regional commissioner was an Ashanti man. Meila, at a certain point, was regional commissioner for Eastern region.
Mm-hmm.
This man, Kabori, and so, I mean, put like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so people were beginning to, live with people who were not of their kindred,
Yeah.
but were ruling them. When Rawlings came,
Mm-hmm.
and that's why I don't like politics. I suppose on the eve of the elections, he, reassigned these regional back to their own backyards for
Mm-hmm.
political effect,
Yes.
so that they could, whip up support,
Mm.
you see, thereby destroying the sound, you know, uh, quest for fusion of
National unity.
tribal loyalties and these sort of things.
Yeah.
You see,
Okay.
at Champion's time, you couldn't talk of tribalism. It was the corruption that brought him down.
Okay.
At that time, no corruption.
Mm.
I mean, no
No
tribalism as
tribalism.
such.
Yes.
No.
Okay.
Let's see. And we need that.
Yes.
Up to date in Ghana, uh,
Mm-hmm.
in 2016, as was Akufo-Addo was on the platform. Yeah, come for
Yes.
or die, they die.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, when you start like this, eh, you're starting on a very divisive,
Mm-hmm.
you know, ethnic, tribalistic tangent.
Yeah.
What kind of head of state are you going to be? You know,
Yeah.
I think 2012 or so, Mahama was campaigning generally well. He went to Upper, you say, "Oh, I'm your own son."
Yeah.
But I mean, nonsense like this.
Mm-hmm.
Eh? The Constitution of Ghana says the state, in the directive principles of state policy, the state shall take measures to encourage unity and loyalty of Ghanaians to the state above all other considerations.
Okay.
Mahama and
Akufo-Addo.
Akufo-Addo in their campaigns were promising 6 more regions.
Mm.
Small country like this, which
Yes.
are 10 regions. this is the constitutional, goal to unite the people and encourage patriotism above all. And you are subdividing them because of
Politics.
ethnic tensions you detected. You thought if you did that, you could harvest electoral advantage. These sort of things.
Okay.
These sort of things.
Okay.
And then I also said, even our very notion of politics, is warped. Well, if you look at the history, it didn't start on any sound foundation.
Okay.
It was acrimonious. The
Very divided.
UP,
Yep.
yes, and they were trying to bring down Nkrumah by all kinds of means, bomb throwing, assassination, and so forth. This was it, scramble for power. Although at that time he had not yet become a dictator. So why was this happening? And these people were doing that, grouping in Togo and planning these things, Buzia and all kinds of people, planning assassination, you know, uh, tactics. Those days, they said, oh, they will have to make use of the NT boys, Northern Territory,
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so
All right.
I was saying that we need a national dialogue on these things to redefine what politics actually should mean
Yes.
and to find out whether we are a nation at all,
Okay.
well, a state. And if so, what should we do to translate Ghana into a nation and not just a state
Oh.
of hostile tribal inclinations? Uh, you know.
Okay.
So anyway,
All right. Well, I think you've summed it up for us. Good governance, national unity is the way forward, and we should depend on our own intellect to build a nation rather than copy from Western democracies, so-called Western democracies, right? So
yeah,
yeah,
so called indeed.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So Justice Atuguba, thank you very much for honoring our invitation. We've had a very exciting conversation. The time flew by so fast. In fact,
Yeah.
yeah. So hopefully, when we call on you again, you will grace, you honor us with your presence, and I really appreciate your presence. Right. Thank
Well, I'm surprised to hear that I have any honor to bestow on
you.
anybody.
A lot
I'm
of it.
just struggling to say or say what I think uh, is good for this country.
Yeah, I think
I'm not
our
sure.
viewers enjoyed you
Yeah.
thoroughly, and we hope to.
Well,
Yeah. All
thank
right.
you. Thank you.
So I
I'm
wish you
grateful
all.
to you for the opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I must say that you and I have the same alma mater. We went to the same
Oh,
high school.
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
but not as
Um,
classmates.
I- I'm of the archival
Mm.
vintage.
Okay.
Uh, I entered Notre Dame in 1962.
Okay.
We're
Wow.
the third batch. We're
Yeah.
the third batch.
Okay.
Mm.
Okay. Wow.
You
Um,
entered when?
I entered 1999.
Ah,
I mean, I
uh,
finished in 2001. Yeah.
that's
So we are.
recent.
Yeah. Many
But
many
the,
years.
the Notre Dame texture in you, in your
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
mental
Yeah.
outlook, and that's very good and
Yeah.
encouraging.
Thank you.
Mm,
Thank you.
mm, mm, mm.
All right. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. And to our viewers,
Thank you
thank you
very
for
much.
joining us. Thank you for joining us. And then we hope to come your way again next week, Saturday, with the assembly.
You let a yum yum yum